Well, hi, everyone. Wherever you happen to be, we want to welcome you to Unstoppable Mindset once again. Unstoppable Mindset, where inclusion, diversity, and the unexpected meet. And unexpected gets to be a fun part of what we get to do today by any standard. And I'm not going to tell you anymore because I want it to be unexpected until it happens. We do have a wonderful guest today. I love people who are really animated and engage me in conversation and teach us a lot. And that's true of our guest today, DW Starr. And I'm not going to tell you anymore. I'm just going to say, DW, I want to welcome you to Unstoppable Mindset.
Hi, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing lovely. And you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Did you know that maybe you or maybe even your audience don't know that Lady Gaga was fired after her first record album after only 3 months, that Michael Jordan didn't make his high school basketball team the first time, that Taylor Swift was told she was too young for the music industry, get that, and
Yeah, really.
that J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series, was turned down by 12 publishers, was a single mother, and she was in poverty and wrote her book in a coffee shop. Now, the reason I'm telling you that is because all those people figured out how to find the confidence to be the successes they became.
And it really is about confidence, isn't it?
It is. Confidence matters.
And it's not arrogance, it's confidence. And there's a big difference.
Correct. Absolutely. The difference to me is authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
When someone is truly confident, they don't need to prove it to anybody because it's internal. It's authentic. It's who they really are. And that comes with the good and the not so good sometimes.
Yeah.
And the recognition of those things within ourselves.
Good point. Well, how did you, I'd love to learn more about your story of how you did all that. And maybe you can tell us a little about the early DW and how you evolved over time, as it were.
Well, how far back do you want me to start?
Oh, go to the beginning. What this, early memories, you got to tell us about you.
I'm 2 years old. I'm in the
There you
back
go.
seat. I'm 2 years old. I'm in the back seat of my mother's car, and bam, I fall out, smack my head on the ground, and fracture my skull.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
No.
Okay.
I just know that people told me what happened and that I was lucky I didn't get run over by a car or a truck. So then I'm 6 years old. I'm riding my bike playing follow the leader. My friend goes across the street. I follow my friend on my bike, and bam, I get hit by a truck. I fly 15 feet in the air, smash my leg on the curb and break my femur. And I hit my head on the ground and go unconscious. Brain injury number 2. When I wake up, I don't mean to interrupt you. I do
no,
that
go ahead.
sometimes. So if I do that, tell me to stop interrupting.
I was just going to ask if you remembered that one.
No.
Okay.
No.
Anyway, so you broke your leg and you hit your head.
Right. And when I woke up, I found out that I had a broken leg, and then eventually they put me in a cast from my stomach down to both my feet with a bar in between. So I had a cast on both legs connected at the stomach area all the way down to my toes, and then a bar in between. So I couldn't even move without being carried around the house as a 6-year-old.
Why was there a bar?
Oh, so that the legs would grow evenly.
Got it.
And so that I would, and so the two legs would be stabilized. Okay. Otherwise, I would have 2 separate casts. So it was one giant cast.
Right.
Now, when they took the cast off with a buzzsaw, and they took off the cast, my leg had atrophied because it had been in the cast for so long, both of them actually, and the strength of my leg the broken leg was still in a healing process. So I had to, I slept on a mattress in my living room, rolled off the mattress and crawled on my hands and knees into the kitchen and taught myself pediatric physical therapy because it didn't exist back then. And I taught myself how to walk again
Wow.
at 6.
That's
That wasn't
6.
really good for my self-confidence when I was crawling around on my hands and knees. I felt, I do remember feeling a little bit like a loser, you know, because I'm 6 years old. I'm supposed to be able to run and jump, and here I am crawling in my house. And then I go about living my life and different things. And at 40 years old, yep, it happened one more time. I'm in a car on the way to a Billy Joel concert, listening to the music of Billy Joel, and I get hit at 55 miles an hour in a car. My wife breaks 3 ribs, and I hit my head in the inside of the car so hard, I dent the inside of the car with my head, and I don't know it. Because what happened was, after that happened, my wife was complaining about these broken ribs. So well, she didn't know they were broken. She just knew she had pain. And so I crawled over the back seat of the car, went out the passenger side. I didn't realize what I was doing. I was on an adrenaline rush, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And I just told her to sit still and everything be fine. The emergency people came. They took us to the hospital. They asked me if I was okay. I said, sure. I just have a little cut in my leg, on my ankle. They said, oh, well, we'll take care of that at the hospital. I said, sure. Went there. She got tested. She was okay, except for the broken ribs. And the way broken ribs heal is just time. So she was okay. We came home. I went to work the next day. And I was in corporate America, working with one of the largest medical informatics companies on the planet. It's one of the top 1,000 companies in the world. And I was in sales management. And so anyway, what happened was, a couple days later, I started screaming at her. And that's not my personality at all. So I thought, something's not right. And so I ended up going to a couple doctors, and the neuropsychiatrist said to me, I know what your problem is. I went, oh, good, doc. Tell me what my problem is. He said, oh, you've had a traumatic brain injury. I said, that's not possible. He goes, well, why is that? I said, because I've already had 2. He said, well, now you've had 3.
You know, you just don't know how to keep your head out of the way.
You think, and people say, you should stay away from cars.
You got to mind your head better is what it is.
It is.
So he told you you had a traumatic brain injury.
Yeah. And he explained to me that it's a very unique kind of a thing when you get a traumatic brain injury. You never really know what the long range effects are. And he had me read an article about a female steeplejumper, someone who rides a horse and jumps over those railings, you know, the steeplejumper.
Right.
And he said she fell off her horse, hit her head, and she had trouble the rest of her life addressing envelopes. And probably just like you, I said, what, how, it doesn't make sense addressing. And he said, well, the way it works is that our brain is very, very, very unique, and different pieces do different things. So we never know what your long-term effects are going to be. So I was out of work for 3 months because somebody would say, I want to buy one of these, and one of these. And I couldn't remember the first thing the person pointed to within a split second of the time they pointed to it. So I couldn't work because I couldn't remember. And I was really scared. I was scared that I wasn't going to be able to be a good provider for my family, be a good father to my sons, be a good husband to my wife, and just be okay. But after about 3 months, things really started to get better. And that's the time when I remembered, when I was a kid, how I remembered things. Because even as a kid, Now, remember, I had 2 head injuries by the time I was 6. I don't know if the reason I had trouble remembering things when I was 6 was because of that or not. But I do remember my teacher telling me how to spell arithmetic. I'm doing all the talking here.
That's okay.
So funny.
It's your
Okay.
story.
All right. All right. How to
People have heard
spell.
mine.
Okay, cool. I gotcha. All right. So, arithmetic. A rat in the house might eat the ice cream. Arithmetic. A rat in the house might eat the ice cream. And
Mm.
I went, I loved that as a kid. And I remembered that as an adult. And I said, wait a minute, maybe I can start remembering things by using that kind of a technique. And that's what I did. I started creating memory hacks for myself in different arenas of my life. And that's how I remember things, to the point where even today, I use some of those memory hacks for my own presentations, my own performances. I use my last name Starr as a memory hack to remember my own stuff.
Yeah. How long ago? So you had the last accident at 40, and how many years ago was that?
Well, that's going to give away my age. You want me
Oh,
to do
well, that's up to you.
that? Let's just say I'm somewhere around 60.
Okay. So it's been a while. And so you've
Yeah.
been using the memory hack, if you will, techniques for quite a while, and you
And I
still use
teach it
them.
to people too sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever
Which
forget? Let me ask you a question, Michael. Do you ever forget something that you want to remember when you are going from one place to another?
I do.
Okay. Do you do you um do you have things that you always like to carry with you when you go from one place to another, like a phone or a notebook or something like that?
I do.
So, do you ever forget them?
The things that I carry, typically not. I've gotten into the habit of carrying them, and I don't.
Okay. We find that many people do forget things like their glasses or their
Hmm.
phone or their keys or whatever. So what I did for myself is I created a mnemonic device called Please Bring a Kazoo Guide. Now, a kazoo is that thing that you
Right.
play, that you hum in like
Whoop,
that.
whoop, whoop. Yep.
So
I
please
have one.
bring. Oh, you have one?
I do. Not right here, but I have one.
So do
I
I.
got it as a kid. Yeah.
So I used to use that in my performances sometimes. So I said, all right, I'll create a mnemonic device. Please bring a kazoo guide, phone, briefcase, attitude, keys, and glasses. I never want to forget my good attitude, but I also don't want to forget my phone or my briefcase or my keys or my glasses. So that's the kind of mnemonic device memory hack that I'm talking about, that I've used for myself to help me be confident and stay confident in my memory portion of my life.
And I use mnemonics for some things from time to time, or not so much mnemonics, but something. Um, Oftentimes, when I'm creating something that I want to remember,
Hmm.
I will convert print characters to braille dots, and I will create combinations that, for whatever reason, I remember, to help me not forget the things that I don't want to forget when I do that. So I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate it a great deal. And I think that there's a lot of value in everyone finding ways to remember things. One of the things that I've always been good at remembering are phone numbers.
Mm.
And I work really hard even today when I have a smartphone that is very accessible, that I can put contacts in and do. I still want to remember the phone numbers because I think that keeps me sharper by remembering things. So I
Okay.
remember a lot of phone numbers, and I've made it a conscious effort to do that, so that and it's worked for me specifically, to be able to do that. I remember the phone number that we had when I grew up in Palmdale, California. And I even remember the phone number that I had in my dorm at UC Irvine. Um, and and some of the other phone numbers like that.
Did
And
any of
it's
them start with 213?
no, mine started with 805 and then 714 because I
Okay.
went to UC Irvine. So it was
Mhm.
714. And I have a friend who, and I still remember it, um, his phone number at UC Irvine. Actually, he was a PhD candidate at UC Irvine, but he lived off campus, and his number was 714 Ohm War 1, OHMWAR 1. And I always thought that was a clever way to remember it.
Yeah, it
I
is.
and I had one. I'm trying to remember. I know the last. I've got to think about it. One of the phone numbers that I worked with at UC Irvine ended with Jet One, and I don't remember right off. I'll think about it. The first three digits, but it's good to have the little acronyms, or not acronyms, but mnemonics and memory devices, and they're very valuable to use, and more people should probably use them. They might remember things better.
So what I figured out, Michael, is I figured out why we forget some of these things. And
Uh-huh.
that has helped me help people understand more about building their own confidence. And the reason that we forget these things is because we're already where we're going instead of where we are. So
Yeah.
we're already thinking about getting in the car, walking into the other room, um, leaving the hotel, getting off an airplane. We're already thinking about those things as if they're already starting to happen instead of paying attention to where we actually are at the moment. So this memory hack actually creates something that we all call mindfulness, which is pretty wild because I never knew that was going to be one of the outcomes. But because of that, I'm able to stay in the present a lot more often. And I like that feeling.
Yeah.
And and it's that's all part of about being confident, is being confident with who you are in the moment.
You asked earlier if I have a phone and remember my phone and other things. I know I've stayed in many hotels. And one of the things, again, it's a discipline that I've developed, is that I never leave a hotel key laying on a table. It stays in the pocket. And my phone will either be in my pocket, or if I'm in a hotel room, I will make sure that it is plugged in by the head of the bed, so that when I get up in the morning, it is one of the first things that I touch. And I'm very deliberate about that. But the hotel key, especially, I just have always developed this habit, this technique of never leave it laying around. And for me, there are several reasons. One, I am too much an out of sight, out of mind kind of guy. And so the bottom line is not seeing the hotel key. If I put it down somewhere, that's going to be a problem. So the better thing is to keep it in a pocket.
Makes sense to me.
It works.
Yeah.
But people really do allow their minds to, I think you pointed out very well, move to um, away from where we are to where we're going to be, and we lose that control, and we never seem to learn from our mistakes, or we think, oh well, I can just see the hotel key so I won't forget it. Yeah, that works really well.
Hmm. Well, if you think of if people in your audience were to think of people who they have in their life, who they feel are confident and would like to have some of that confidence, or somebody in a movie or a TV or in a book they read that has a really good solid hold on confidence, they'll see that those characters or those people live in the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a really important piece of the puzzle of confidence. It's not the only thing, obviously. There's lots of other pieces of the puzzle, but that, like I say, that's an important piece. So
Yeah, it is. Well, so you weren't doing any of this coaching, I presume, um, or hadn't really thought through as much about confidence and so on before you had your accident at 40?
I was dabbling. I
Okay.
was dabbling. Um, I I I was inspired through many different people. In fact, I use a mnemonic memory hack to even remember who inspired me. It's to rise, TWORI. Instead of an S, it's a Z, ZE, TWORIZE, to rise above, to rise ahead. And it stands for Tony Robbins, Wayne Dyer, Oprah Winfrey, Ronald Reagan, Indira Gandhi, Zig Ziglar, and Eleanor Roosevelt.
Mm,
So I use my mnemonic. Like I said, I use these memory hacks all the time. But those those people, along with Nelson Mandela and his life, were an inspiration to me that I decided that I needed to share my message with the world. And I studied these people and saw all the different roadblocks and the different things that stopped them, that held them back. And I said, if all these different people, I mean, Nelson Mandela was in jail for 20 years,
yeah.
and he was put there by the country that he eventually became president of.
Yeah.
So if these people could rise above their own circumstances, I certainly could teach myself how to do that too. And so that's what I did. And once I did that, then I said, I want to share this message with the world. And so I did that for many, many years with adults. And then there's this thing that happened called COVID.
Yeah.
And all the speakers, right? It
Yep.
shut down.
Yep.
And during that time, some of the speakers and performers realized they could use this concept called Zoom. And I did a program in Ethiopia on Zoom. And I saw how successful it was. And this program was with college students and their professors. And up until that time, I had only been working with corporate America and adults. You know, big Fortune 500 companies. That's all on my website if somebody wants to look me up and all the different companies I worked with. But anyway, so during COVID, and I did that, and I said, you know what? When I come out of this, I want to make a really strong effort to make a big focus on teens and young adults, because I figured something out while I was, while we were in this COVID coma almost at times, it felt like, is that young adults and teens were going to their older mentors, whether it was their parents or whether it was their boss, and saying, I don't understand this COVID thing. Can you please help me understand this? And their boss and their parents and their grandparents had no clue what to tell them because they didn't know what to do either.
Yeah.
So what happens is all these young people who have these people on a pedestal, the pedestal starts to drop, and this hurts the teens and young adults' self-confidence to the point where you start seeing all kinds of major issues going on with young people, and it's all over the news, and even the Surgeon General talked about it. Depression, higher rates of suicide, anxiety, heavy social anxiety, and on top of that, social media. So the teens and young adults sometimes can't even talk to each other because they only know how to do it on this machine.
Yeah. Or with text.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's actually, yeah, both computer and text. And like
Right.
I'm holding up a phone right now, and it says BS. Oh, I better tell people what that stands for, or they're going to get freaked out. That reminds me, that's my memory hack that stands for belief system. Okay, it says BS, but it stands for belief system. It
Fair enough.
reminds me that the way I perceive my life is all based on what I believe. If I change my beliefs, I can change my perception.
Yep. And the other part of that is if you need to change your beliefs, that is, we should always look to grow. We have a belief system, we have what we believe in. And I'm not saying that people need to question what they believe in, but they should always be open to learning new things and letting that augment their belief system.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's design. That BS is designed every time I pick up my phone to remind me if what I believe is in my best interest, if it's healthy for me. And if it's not, then I need to do something about it.
During COVID, and I'm not trying to brag or sound arrogant or anything, but I know, and I think I can connect it up here. I didn't have a lot of social anxiety. My wife didn't even have a lot of social anxiety. Um, we went through it, but we also felt we lived in a house, the two of us. We live where I live now. She passed away in 2022, but just she
I'm
was in a
sorry for
wheelchair.
your loss.
Well, she was in a chair her whole life, and her body just started slowing down. So we lost her in November of 2022, and it's just kind of one of those things. As her physical medicine doctor once told her, the body doesn't come with a lifetime warranty. So
Right.
it happened.
None of
But
us get out of here alive.
well, not in that sense, and but the thing is that we felt okay, we got to lock down, we'll lock down, and we did, but we were much more oriented toward, as you would say, living in the moment and not worrying about all the things that we couldn't control. And
Right.
I can think about that very intellectually and say that's how we reacted to life. We didn't worry about what we couldn't control. We focused mainly on what we could. Oh, occasionally we worried about one thing or another, but mostly we just didn't worry about what we couldn't control and focused on the things that we had control over. And we had control over things. Mail comes in, spray it with a little bit of Lysol just to play safe. And neither of us ever got COVID, but we always wore masks when we went out. And I still, when I fly, wear a mask just because you never know. But I also had a lot of fun with masks, and I've told this story a couple times on Unstoppable Mindset. We went to a bank one day, and I went into the bank wearing a mask. I was carrying my white cane. I didn't use my guide dog. It was a quick trip, so he stayed home. And I walked in. Karen stayed in the car because she also had an autoimmune situation with rheumatoid arthritis. So she drove me to the bank, but she felt she shouldn't go in, and I agreed. Anyway, I went in wearing a mask, go up to the teller, and they all know me there. But I go up and I say, when we greet each other, and I said hello, and they said hello, and then I said, "Don't you think it's funny how today somebody wearing a mask can walk into a bank," and then I held my cane up and say, "This is a stick up."
Right.
And the manager came over and he said, "We haven't had such a good laugh all day," which is exactly why I did it. But um, we all have choices to how we deal with things, and how we react to things. And I think so often I heard so many people being so anxious about using Zoom fatigue and everything else. And I realized the fact of the matter is that COVID offered and still offers us a great opportunity to deal with um, a lot of things in a different way. And that rather than having Zoom fatigue, use it to your advantage. And unfortunately, we just don't worry about that because we are so used to doing it one way, we don't get innovative anymore.
Hmm. Yeah, so if you look at the people typically that are most happy in life, it's because they're continually looking for a way to grow. And it doesn't necessarily have to be financially, it
Mhm.
can be spiritually, it can be emotionally, it can be psychologically, it can be financially, it can be educationally, but if that's even a word, educationally.
That
But
works.
Okay.
It
But
works
anyway,
today anyway.
yeah, but the key, I guess, is that if you're continually growing, you're firing this, and trust me, I've studied the brain a lot. You can only imagine after 3 head
Have,
injuries I've
have,
been.
have, have you discovered that you do need to mind your head and keep it out of the way?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Away from cars.
Cars, yeah, at
Yeah.
least.
So what happens is that we're we're continually reassessing ourselves. That those seem to be the people who are the most happiest.
Hmm. I think there's a lot of truth to that. They don't worry about the things that they don't have a lot of control over because all that's going to do is drive you crazy.
Exactly.
And it
Exactly.
does. It drives too many people way too crazy, which is too bad.
I
And
think
it,
another thing for me though that's really important that I want to share is that your life doesn't happen by chance, it happens by choice.
yes.
And so, we've all heard this, but it's so true that by not making a decision, you're still making a decision. So if you're in a situation and you go, oh, I don't really know what I want to do about this, well, you're making the decision not to make a decision. And that in itself is a choice. And you always have a choice. Always have, in Viktor Frankl's book, A Man's Search for Meaning, which is quite an amazing book.
Yeah.
If anyone in your audience hasn't read it, and they want to really understand the deep psychological meaning for how people survive the concentration camps, uh, is in his book. He talks about the importance of recognizing that it's a choice, it's your choice to search for meaning. It's, I made a post, I did a post just the other day. I said, it's not what happens to you, it's how you perceive what happens to you. It's not what happens to you, it's what you feel and think about what happens to you. It's not the actual occurrence itself, it's how you deal with it. And I think that's really important when it comes to confidence, because you can look at failure as failure, or you can look at failure as a stepping stone. I mean, we've all heard this stuff for years, but
Hmm.
it's true. That's why we keep hearing it, because it's true.
September 11th happened, and I believe that we didn't have any control over it happening. I still don't think that no matter what happened, we could have foreseen it coming, but it happened. And that's not something we have any control over, but we all have control over how we choose to deal with it, which is
Yeah,
exactly what you're
absolutely.
saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And, for me, my parents were very dysfunctional. Okay. So I had a choice. I could use that as an excuse not to be happy, not, to be dysfunctional as a parent when I had kids. Although, but I choose to look at those things as lessons for me to grow from, to become who I want to be. And there's one thing I want to make sure I say in this podcast, and that's that, somebody once said to me, well, DW, if I could just like learn how to do what you're talking about, like in 5 minutes, just 5 minutes, because everybody's in a hurry, everybody wants to do
Of
everything
course.
yesterday, right? So I say, well, here's the key. The key is figure out what you want, figure out why you want it. Keep showing up. Don't let go of that desire. Don't let go of that dream. And then find somebody either in the real world or in the make believe world, meaning movies, TV, books, whatever, or in the real world, a mother, a father, an uncle, a boss, a librarian that a school teacher, right? Whatever. Find somebody who has the kind of confidence that you want to strive for, and then let them mentor you. And if you don't have a direct connection to them, use what I call a virtual mentor. And that's what I did. Ronald Reagan, Indira Gandhi, Zig Ziglar, Ellen Rose. I didn't have any connection with those people. But what I did was I let them virtually mentor me. And that's what I would suggest the person do. And then for 2 minutes every morning and every night, imagine yourself being like that person. And then for 2 minutes during the day, take a situation in your life, whatever it is, and for 2 minutes, be like that person's confidence would be. Act as if you were that confident for just 2 minutes. You can do it for 2. Oh, there goes my dog. Hold on a second. Or woman. There you go. Okay, I'm back.
Things happen.
Yeah. So anyway, what I was saying was for 2 minutes in the morning and 2 minutes in the evening, you just imagine you have that kind of confidence. What would that person do in the situation you're trying to be more confident about? And then during the day for 2 minutes, simply, like, let's say you're nervous about making phone calls as a salesperson, a cold call, or let's say that you don't have the confidence you want to have for playing the guitar in front of 5 friends. For 2 minutes, just pretend like you have the confidence of that mentor and just act as if you have it. And that's what I did. And over time, eventually, I became D.W. Starr. That's not my legal name, that's my professional name.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, why Indira Gandhi?
Well, if you look at how big that country is and how populated it is, and how she was one of the first females to be in charge of I think she might have been the first female to be in charge of a country that big.
Uh-huh.
And her personality, her graciousness, her tenderness was an important piece of what I wanted for my life.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just curious because I figured some people might ask that question if they were here. So I thought it was probably relevant to ask.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah,
I agree with the
absolutely.
answer. Well, so you went off and you had all these brain injuries, and so it was you were 40. Did you go back to work eventually for the company that you?
Yeah, after 3 months, I went back to work and slowly. Well, I went back to work. I'm not sure I remember this, but I went back to work. I think a few days a week, and then eventually I went back to work full time. And I was fortunate enough to be one of the top sales producers in that company for many, many years. And I worked for that company for, wow, about 30 years.
But then you decided to switch. What caused
While
that?
I was doing that, I started doing what I'm doing now in a smaller way. And then eventually it just grew and grew to where I was working. So I was selling to some of these corporations, and eventually I ended up doing programs for these corporations through my other hat.
Hmm.
And oh, by the way, if people want to know why I'm dressed like this, you can't see it, but I'm wearing leather pants and leather boots. And that's because if you go to my website or you look at the front cover of my book, one of my books, I got like 5 books, I'm wearing what looks like a movie director's outfit because I play an old-fashioned movie director. And what I do is I help people rewrite the script that's running inside their mind that isn't always so positive. So I'm an inner movie director helping them rewrite the inner script that runs the inner movie in their mind. So I'm dressed as an inner movie director. And that's why I've got the megaphone in the back.
I was just going to say, and hence the megaphone. And if
Yeah,
anybody wants to know how I know about it, because DW told me.
Yeah,
Southern.
yeah. And I use that in my presentation, um, because my presentation is oftentimes also a performance.
Well, that's
I
cool.
forgot to tell you this. I was in the US Army for 3 years. I wrote, produced, directed, acted in commercials for the US Army, stationed in Korea for 1 year.
Cool.
Now, there's
That
probably some other things I forgot to tell you too.
that's
If I
okay.
remember them, I'll let you know.
That's fine. But so you became a speaker, you became a performer, you're
Mhm.
also a writer.
Yeah.
And tell me about your books, if you would.
Okay, well, I wrote 2 books on change. And as what happens is, just like we're talking about recognizing how to be better, how to evolve, I wrote 2 books on change. And as I was working with corporations and doing some personal coaching and consulting, I realized that the reason people were having so much trouble with change is because they didn't have enough confidence.
Hmm.
So I said, why don't I help them with their confidence? And that way, that'll automatically help them change. And so I shifted from change to confidence. And I'm really glad I did that. So the first 2 books are on change. The third book was written to be a very easy, this is the one I was talking about. And by the way, if they go to my website, they can get a free PDF of that book.
What's your
No
website,
charge.
by the way? We'll do it again later, but what is,
Okay.
since you've mentioned it so many times?
Sure. It's D like dog, W like wagon, STARR.net. DW Star with 2 R's.net.
Okay.
Now, what's really crazy, I have to tell you this. I tell this to people, and every time I say it, I think to myself, that's crazy. If you Google me, DW Star, right now, if anyone in your audience Googles me, I am fortunate enough to have the entire page with no advertising. It's crazy to me that has happened, but it's because I've been able to be prolific in many ways. I mean, I have a song, I have a poem, I have my books, I present, I do some personal coaching, consulting. So I'm doing all these different things. So obviously that's why Google finds all those different things. So anyway,
Yeah.
about my books. So the first 2 books was Change Your Size and When Change Means Business. This book is Be Self-Confident Anywhere, Anytime, and with Anyone. It's a 30-page book so that every day you can be a little more confident in a particular arena of interest in your life, and it lists 30 different ones. Um, and I'll read to you really quickly off the back of the book. In this book, you will learn, improve the inner movie and self-talk running in your mind. Use actions and thoughts that will propel your success. Gain a greater self-confidence mindset day by day. And that's what it's designed to do. And like I said, they can get a free PDF copy if they want. If they want to buy the actual book, they can just shoot me an email and we'll take care of that later. It's $10. And anybody on your program, that they'll get a 20% discount. So we'll send it to them for $8 plus shipping.
If
But
they
anyway,
just say that they heard about it here.
yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
great.
And then another book I recently wrote with a partner is on memory and AI, and working with AI. And I'm working on another book with that partner now about imagination and AI. And then I'm also working on a book called Confidence Matters. I have about 2/3 of that book written now.
Cool. So lots going on.
Yeah,
And
I like to stay busy.
well, tell us about your show, your one man
Okay.
show, DW Live, and maybe tell us a story about it or something that happened in it, a memory you have of it recently, and so on.
Sure, sure. Well, I do it with adults, but the ones that really often touch my heart are the younger ones,
Yeah.
because they're our future leaders, and also they're really struggling. I did my DW Live show for the Police Athletic League and the um, it was Boys and Girls Club after school program, at a recreation center here in Florida, in southern Florida. And when I was done, well, like I said, I played old-fashioned movie director. I actually teach them very specific techniques that they can do in depth, like what I talked about real quick in the 5 minutes. I go into depth in my program, where they can actually teach themselves how to be more confident. And within 30 days, they are. It just happens if they do it. You have to do the work, but if you're willing to do the work. So I was done with this one presentation. Actually, it was a performance, and people were coming up and getting, the school had, the recreation center had bought copies of the books for all the kids. So I was doing some autographing, and one came up to me and he goes, "I really enjoyed that." Well, he didn't say he said, "I really liked that." And I said, "Oh, great." And then I always ask people to be more specific so I can know what they like or don't like. And he said, I said, "So what did you really like about it?" And he said, "I liked everything." I went, "Whoa, that's really cool." And then I said, "You want to take a selfie?" And he goes, "Yeah, yeah." And I said, "Okay, give me your phone." And he goes, "Mr. DW, I don't have a
I
phone."
don't have a phone. Mm.
And I said, I think I actually was in disbelief. And so I said, "Oh, you mean you left it in the class?" He goes, "No, no, no. I don't own a phone." And I said to myself, that's why I'm here. I'm here to help that son, that of a mother and father who can't financially afford to buy a phone for their son, help him still feel like he has value and hope. And so I said, "I'll tell you what, we're going to take a selfie with my phone, and then I'm going to make sure the selfie picture gets to your I think he was called a coach, your coach, and he'll make sure you get to see it." And so they did that. But
Mm.
that was an awakening for me, because I knew that some of these teenagers were in situations that weren't ideal in their family life and in their home life and in their economics and all. But for some reason, it finally dawned on me that their parents can't even afford to get them a phone when it's so prolific everywhere. You can forget that. So that was a great, that made me feel good that I was giving back like that.
Well, and
And
that is
that's just
really
one
cool.
story. I got plenty more, but I don't want to inundate people with stories.
No, that's fine. So tell me, what are the key qualities and skills that people need to learn or that you use to help people um, become engrossed in the STAR method, the STARR method? And what does STARR stand for?
Okay, so STARR stands for something that I can remember by using that memory hack.
I figured.
Yeah, and it does it 3 different times in my program. It stands for 3 different things, but I always use the same mnemonic so I can remember it. So let's try this. Michael, what's one of your favorite movies?
ET.
Perfect. Who is the star in that movie?
ET.
Okay. So the S in star stands for the star or the superhero of
Hmm.
that movie. Okay. Now, the T stands for task. What is the task of that character?
Well, in his case, of course, ultimately it's to get home.
Exactly, to get home. Okay. And who is ET's arch villain? The A in star, arch villain.
The law enforcement, the military.
Okay. Now, the first R stands for reach coach. Now, I could have said mentor, but mentor doesn't fit the formula of STARR. So I had to come
Right.
up with a word, and I came up with reach
Reach
coach.
coach. That's clever.
Who in the movie helps the star attain the task by reaching deep down inside themselves and finding the confidence they need to find.
And I don't remember the actor's name, but the young man.
Right. You don't need to know the name. You just need to know the
Yeah.
character role.
Yeah.
Perfect.
The boy.
The little boy. Right. And the final R, what was the reason that E.T. wanted to get home?
Well, he wanted to be back with his people.
Right. Right. He wanted to feel like he was with people he belonged with,
Right.
or extraterrestrials in this case.
Right. Well,
All
people
right.
are people.
So
It's
that's
okay.
the star. So that's the star method, right?
Right.
So what that is, now you take that and you have the audience. I take that and I have the audience take their favorite movie and apply the same formula.
Mm-hmm.
So each one of the people in that audience is connected to my concept through something that makes them happy and feel good.
Okay.
Then I say, okay, now that you've done that, now what we're going to do is we're going to make your inner movie. We're going to help you rewrite the script to your inner movie. So guess what formula we're going to use? STARR.
Of course.
Yeah. The S stands for star. Well, who's the star? They are.
Mm-hmm.
What task do they want to achieve? So I asked them in the audience, what do they want to have more confidence in? And they think about that to themselves, while I have one person up front be the example. And so I bring a student or an adult up front, and I have them be the example and explain their favorite movie, just like I did with you,
Right.
but I'm having the audience do it at the same time. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. So, so this is an interactive presentation and an interactive performance all at the same time. So then who is the arch villain? I have them figure out who the arch villain is in their life. It could be a friend, a so-called friend. It could be a brother. It could be a school teacher. It could be an uncle. It could be it could be a number of different people in different roles, but somebody is their arch villain that is holding them back. And if it's themselves that's the arch villain, and oftentimes I hear that, people go, "Oh, I'm my own worst enemy," or something like that. And I say, okay, but isn't it possible that maybe you heard that from somebody else when you were growing up? That you're no good at, you're not a good singer, or you're never going to amount to anything. That's what my father actually said to me. You're never going to amount to anything. That's another story. I don't want to take the time to do that now, but that's part of what I had to overcome, along with the head injuries.
Did he say that because of the did he say that because of the head injuries, or
no, in addition to the head injuries,
wow.
I had to overcome my father's attitude that I would never amount to anything. And also, just as a sideline, my mom had a stroke when she was 15 years old and was a very angry person as an adult. So I had to deal with a lot of that junk. But anyway, that's another story. So back to what I'm telling you. A stands for arch villain. Then the R stands for reach coach. Who can you create if you don't have a mentor in your life? Who can you make a mentor, or who can you make a virtual mentor? So if you don't have anybody that you really feel comfortable as a 15-year-old making your mentor, maybe it's Superman, or maybe it's Barbie. Somebody who has, or something that has the kind of confidence you want to gain more of, and you use that virtually to help. And then I walk them through these steps, step by step, which we don't have time for now. And then the final R is reason. What's the real reason you want to do this? Why is it a burning desire? And I talk about that earlier in the presentation, the importance of it's not It's not how to do something that's most important. What's most important is why, because when you know the why, you'll figure out the how. So that's that. So now I've got all that, but that's just a formula. It's not a strategy. So then I walk them through the strategy, and the strategy is STARR. What a surprise. S stands for self-assess. Well, that's what they've just done. They've assessed themselves. T stands for take a risk. What risk do they need to take in order to achieve the results they want? And I talk about some of the risks I had. One of the risks is this stuff, notes. Performers
Mhm.
don't use notes typically when they're doing a performance. And I was told, don't use notes. It doesn't look good. I said, well, I have to. I have no choice. But my memory won't be able to remember all my stuff, and I want to make sure I remember. So a couple of those phrases I said to you throughout this program were written down, so I remember to say them.
Mhm.
So, and then the other risk was, of course, that I was told I wasn't going to amount to anything. So who do I think I am?
Yeah.
I'm nobody special. So I had to get over that hump. So those are my risks. So the T and Starr take a risk. I ask them what their risks are. And then the A stands for act as if, and that's where I have them do where they're at home and the 2-minute thing that I talked about earlier. And I go into more depth about that in the presentation too. And then the first R is reassess. See how it's going after a month. See if there's been some major changes. If there have, do the final R, repeat, repeat, repeat. But if it's not working, you got to go back to the original STARR and see if you're really clear on what task you really want to achieve it, who really is your arch villain, and if your reason is a burning desire, because it has to be in order for you to make the shift to have the confidence you want to have.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does. It makes absolute sense.
And the teens are like, wow, no one's ever taught me this before.
Yeah, I'm
You
sure
know?
that's true.
Yeah, and the college kids and the adults. There's plenty of adults that go afterwards, they go, DW, no one's ever like broken it down like that. So it's like concrete. I can actually follow this step by step. I give them a handout they take with them at the end that they can follow step by step.
Wow. All right. I have to ask, since we got the star part, what is DW?
Oh man, I don't usually put this out on the airwaves. Okay, well, I guess I will. What the
I'll
heck?
leave it to you.
No, I'll do it. I'll do it. So when somebody meets me and they go, hi, and I go, hi, I'm DW, and they go, oh, what's that stand for? And I go, oh, well, most of my friends call me DW, so you can call me DW too. And that usually works.
That's fair. Okay.
But I'm gonna say it here. Yeah, I'm gonna say, why not? Okay. So I say, once somebody gets to know me and understand me more, then it'll make more sense what DW stands for. If I tell them right up front, it's weird. Okay. But now that people have heard me and they've listened to a little bit about my story and how, my personality and my attitude about life, it'll make more sense. So Ringo Starr had a great last name. I loved it. So when it was time for me to become a writer at 9 years old, because at 9 years old, I started writing little short stories, I called myself my legal first name and Starr is my last name. And
Mm-hmm.
that became my pen name. When I got to be an adult and decided I was going to be this character that helps people with their confidence, I said, okay, I don't even want to use any part of my legal name. I want a completely different professional name. So I said, okay, well, what is it that I do? I help people weave their dreams into their life on a daily basis. I'm a dream weaver.
Weaver.
I'm a
Mm-hmm.
DW.
Mm-hmm.
And so every time I introduce myself to somebody and say I'm DW, I'm reminding myself that that's where my focus is,
Yeah.
helping people to do that.
Yeah. And I appreciate you telling us that story. And I thank you for doing that. Tell me, What are some of the common misconceptions about confidence?
Well, let's look at politics for 5 seconds.
Oh, there's confidence or lack of it or something. But anyway,
So
sure.
I'm not I'm not going to get specific about anything about
Oh,
politics.
I understand.
I'm going to be totally generalized. The reality is that if you are truly confident, you don't need to tell anybody or prove it. So if you see any of that in politics, you'll know that there's a possibility that there's some low self-esteem floating underneath.
Yeah.
And that's true not just in politics. That's
No.
true when you talk to somebody at a party who is using the most sophisticated words they can come up with to try to prove to you that they are smart, that they know their stuff. The most confident people can explain what they believe like you're 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Not talking down, but making it their complicated wisdom in a way that it's understandable to people who don't have that education in that particular arena or training. Einstein even talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
Make it as simple as you can, but not too simple. And that's a paraphrase of one of his quotes.
Right. And then there's the common phrase of keep it simple, stupid, but
Exactly.
yeah.
So overconfidence is usually a camouflage for low self-esteem.
Yeah.
So what true confidence is like I said earlier in the show, it's authenticity. It's being who you are with all your good parts and your not so good parts, whether it's your physical nature, whether it's your emotional nature, whether it's your psychological nature, whether it's your educational background. If you're truly confident, then you accept it all and then you build from there.
Yeah.
That's my belief. And that one ain't changing.
Nope. And I buy it. I think you're absolutely right. I think that we all too often, I think there's a difference. We all too often just don't project the confidence that we can. I think there's a lot of difference between a lack of confidence and humility. And there's nothing wrong with being confident. There is something wrong with being arrogant. But confidence doesn't mean arrogance. Confidence means that you have convictions, you have things that you know, and you're certain about them, which is a fine thing.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, some people get confused with aggressive and assertive. It's the
Mm-hmm.
same thing. It's that same concept. You want to be assertive, you just don't want to be aggressive, because if you're assertive, it shows your confidence. So if you're in an interview for a job, you want to show that you're assertive in that interview. You don't want to just have that interviewer feel like they're not running the whole show, but that you count in the interview. You're just not another number where they're just going checking off the list. You
Mm-hmm.
show your confidence by being assertive. And it's the same, people, they get a meal at a restaurant. You see this a lot in a lack of self-confidence. They
Mm-hmm.
get a meal at a restaurant and it's either something they didn't order, period, or it's just not done correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And because they lack the confidence, they're not assertive to take a step to correct it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not aggressive, and that's not a complainer. That's someone who's valuing their own self-worth. So there's
The
these fine lines sometimes that are important to recognize.
the aggression comes in if you decide you're going to deal with the incorrectness of the meal, how you deal with it.
Exactly.
And I know I actually had a situation just last week. I went with someone to a restaurant and my food came and it was cold. and it wasn't supposed to be. It was supposed to be a hot meal.
Right.
So when the server came back, I just said, "Hey, this is cold. Touch it, and you can see." And she said, "No, I won't touch it." And I said, "I guarantee you, it's cold. If they could heat it up, I'd sure appreciate it." I wouldn't ever be rude to a person and be obnoxious and say, "You dummy, you brought me a lousy meal," and all that. Well, what happened was that it came back nice and hot, but it also came back being brought back by someone who I think was the manager. He heard that we had sent it back, and he actually had come over and said, "What's the problem?" And we explained. And then he was the one who actually brought the meal back. And it was nice and hot, and it was so much better. So, but
You
I,
know, I
but
have I have something I call a personal gratitude program, and I've taught that to in corporate America, and I've taught it to my now adult sons. And that's that when somebody gives me over the top great service, I recognize it
yep,
by going to their boss, either personally, in person, or by phone, or by email, or by a form of some kind, and letting them know that I don't take for granted the exceptional service I got.
I do that too.
It's such an amazing feeling, because when you do that, I'm sure you know, when you do that, it's a win-win all across the board.
Of course it is.
The employee feels good, the person who hired the employee feels good, and the next person that employee sees is going to get some of that good vibes to them.
And you feel good.
Absolutely.
Well, tell me, so you do some coaching, you said, in addition to doing the one
Occasionally,
man show.
occasionally, it's very limited.
Uh-huh. How do you choose to, or who you coach, or how does that work?
It works with working with a client that is clear about their why, and they are passionate about their why, and they just need some guardrails or guideposts to help them figure out how they can find the how.
Got it.
So it's very limited, and it's at a very high level, economically and corporately.
But mostly you travel and you do your show, and you've clearly
Right.
been to a lot of states. And
Yes.
I know that because DW told me about the map behind him. So he's been to a lot of states, and he's been to a number of countries,
40 states, and I think it's 9 countries.
which
Or
is cool.
no, it's 15 countries.
Wow.
15,
Okay.
sorry, 15. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for being here. So tell us once again, if people want to reach out, learn more about you, maybe even contact you, how do they do that?
So there's a few ways. One is then go to my website, which is dwstarr.net. They can find me on Instagram at DW Starr, on LinkedIn at DW Starr. They can find me on YouTube and TikTok at Confidence Crusader. Confidence Crusader. And yeah, I think that's good. I mean, if you want, I can give my email address out. We'll just use the info@dwstarr.net.
That's
They can
cool.
certainly shoot me, so they can feel free to follow me, or get a free copy of a PDF copy of my book, and they can Google me. Like I said, I'm all over there. That's just still crazy to me that I have I'm lucky enough to have all of that without any advertising.
It's a great blessing. Well, I want to thank you for being here and being with us and taking all this time. I've enjoyed it, and I've learned a lot, and I would think and hope that everyone listening has as well. And that if you like what you heard, let DW know. And I certainly would appreciate it if you'd let us know. You can reach me easily enough by emailing me at Michael, Michaelhi, at accessibe, accessibe.com. Or you can go to our podcast page, which is www.michaelhingson.com/podcast. And Michael Hingson is Michaelhingson. Yes, and we're on LinkedIn and Facebook and a number of the social media pages too, but love to get emails. And whenever you are thinking about this, would certainly appreciate it if you give us a 5-star rating wherever you're listening to us and listening to the podcast. And as DW does the one-man show and travels and speaks and so on, so do I. If you ever need a speaker, would love to hear from you. speaker@michaelhingson.com. We appreciate it. But most of all, once again, I want to thank you, DW, for being here with us today. I think this has been a lot of fun, and we ought to do it again sometime.
Absolutely. You know, and just a shout out to some of your other podcast videos I had an opportunity to watch. You do a fantastic job, Michael, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, let's do it again. Let's do it again, right?
Sounds great. Take care, buddy.